I thought I had it all until the day my husband's betrayal shattered everything. He didn't just cheat on me with his coworker, he took away the one thing I thought I could trust. But what he didn't know was that his mistake would push me to become the CEO of his company's rival. This is the story of how I turned heartbreak into my greatest victory. My name is Ava, and the life I thought I knew was shattered in one phone call. It wasn't the kind of news you're prepared for. It wasn't even something I saw coming. I was just sitting at my desk, going through some emails, when my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen, and there it was. Ben's name, followed by a text I wish I had never read. "I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this. I love you, but I'm with someone else." At first, I didn't understand. My fingers hovered over the screen as I tried to process the words. Someone else? But I knew it couldn't be true. Ben and I had built everything together. The house, the career, the plans. We were supposed to be unstoppable, partners in every sense, or so I thought. As I stared at the message, the reality began to sink in, and it hurt more than I was ready to admit. My heart sank to my stomach, but it wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the cruel twist of fate that I had never seen coming. Ben wasn't just seeing anyone. He was seeing someone from work, and not just anyone. It was his coworker, Emily, the one I'd always thought of as a friend, the one I had trusted, the one I had shared my life and secrets with. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone against the wall, but instead I froze. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. How could he? How could they? Every promise, every plan seemed like a lie now, but I couldn't let him see how much it hurt me. I couldn't let him see how much I cared. As the shock started to wear off, the anger began to take its place. I wasn't just angry at him. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting him, for being so naive. And just when I thought I might lose control, I felt something else, a rush of determination. If he could betray me, then I was going to prove to him, to everyone, that I was stronger than this. You see, before this all happened, I had everything under control. Or so I thought. Ben and I had the perfect life. On the surface, it was all there. Two professional people, a nice home, everything a couple could ask for. But what people didn't see was how much I had been putting into my career. I had worked so hard to get where I was, climbing the ladder at my company, making sacrifices, juggling endless meetings, trying to make my name known. Ben was proud of me, or at least I thought he was. But in the back of my mind, I had always known something wasn't quite right. He had a way of pulling away, of shutting me out just when things seemed perfect. I thought it was just the stress from his job, the long hours. But now it made sense. It all made sense. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was professional too. Ben's company, the one he worked for, was in the same industry as mine. We were rivals, but the thing was, I didn't see it that way. I believed we could both succeed, even in a competitive world. But Ben, he saw it as a rivalry in every sense. While I was working late nights, building connections and pushing my company forward, he was playing a dangerous game. And now his affair with Emily, his coworker, wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was business too. I realized he had been sharing information with her, undermining everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for. I wasn't just betrayed in love, I was betrayed in my career too. I remember sitting at my desk, my hands shaking, staring at that message for what seemed like hours. It was like my world had collapsed in an instant, and I was left picking up the pieces. Ben had no idea what he'd done, no idea what he had just unleashed. But as I sat there, something inside of me clicked. I wasn't going to sit around and cry about it. I wasn't going to let this man, this woman tear me down. I wasn't going to let them ruin me. If they wanted to make a fool out of me, then fine. But I was going to prove them all wrong. I didn't cry, at least not right then. What I did was grab my phone, send a text to my assistant to reschedule the next few meetings, and told her to hold off on my calls for the rest of the day. I was going to do something about this. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. If Ben thought he could destroy me, then he was about to find out just how wrong he was. I went into work the next day and I did something I hadn't done before. I threw myself into my company. No distractions, no excuses. I started taking risks, big risks. I began pushing for new deals, new partnerships, and new opportunities. I didn't care who I had to step over. I wasn't just trying to recover from this betrayal, I was trying to come out on top. Ben and Emily? They were just a bump in the road. I was determined to rise higher than they could ever imagine. But as my career took off, Ben's life began to unravel. I didn't hear from him much after that day, and when I did, it was to apologize, to beg me to understand. He tried to explain how it happened, why it happened, but it didn't matter. All I could think about was how far ahead I was getting in the business world, how my company was gaining ground and expanding. He wasn't part of my plan anymore. He wasn't even part of my future. Weeks passed, and I kept my head down, working harder than ever. And then the unthinkable happened. The company Ben worked for had a major setback, one that shook their entire operation. And guess who was right there to pick up the pieces? Me, my company. We swooped in, took the opportunity, and turned it into something bigger than I ever thought possible. It was a success that not only pushed me ahead professionally, but also made Ben's company look weak in comparison. It felt good, better than I thought it would. I knew I had made the right choice, but part of me felt a small, bitter satisfaction. Ben had underestimated me, and now he was watching me soar while his life crumbled around him. What I didn't know at the time was that this was only the beginning. What he didn't know was that I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And before long, the day came when I became the CEO of my company, the very same company that was now competing against Ben's. He had no idea how far I had come, how much I had fought to get here. As I signed my name on the dotted line, officially taking the seat of power, I thought about how much had changed, how much I had changed. Ben had tried to break me, but instead he had made me stronger. And the best part? He had no idea. Now, I sit in my office looking out over the skyline, knowing that my success is mine. My journey wasn't easy, and it didn't come without pain, but I learned something important along the way. When life throws its worst at you, you have two choices. You can let it destroy you, or you can rise above it. And I chose to rise. I didn't have time to dwell on what Ben had done, at least not right away. After everything I'd learned, I couldn't afford to break down. I had a life to rebuild, a career to grow, and dreams that had been put on hold for far too long. But it wasn't easy to shut out the anger, the hurt. At night, when I was alone, it crept in, gnawing at me. I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that Ben had not only betrayed me emotionally, but professionally too. How could he do this to me? How could he sleep with Emily, someone I had trusted, someone who had been around our company, someone who was supposed to be a friend? It was in those moments of silence, when I let myself feel it all, that I realized something deep. I had spent so much time building my life around Ben, but now I had to build it around me. I wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. I wasn't going to let the woman who took my husband, who had taken so much, win. I would show them both just how strong I was. But first, I needed to take control of my life, my career, everything. I started by getting angry. Not at Ben, not at Emily, but at myself for letting them think I was weak. They thought they could break me. But I wasn't that person. I couldn't let them steal my confidence, my dreams. So I threw myself into work even more. I didn't care about the long hours, the sleepless nights, the frustration. If I had to put in twice the effort to get to where I needed to be, then so be it. But this time, it wasn't for Ben. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. I remember sending emails in the middle of the night, making calls when the rest of the world was asleep. It felt good to be in control again, to be making decisions that mattered. Slowly, I began to notice the results. My company's profile was rising, and the deals were coming in faster than I expected. I was becoming more than just the woman who had been betrayed. I was becoming a force in my industry. But as my company began to grow, so did the pressure. I knew Ben was watching. I could almost feel his eyes on me, and every success, every step forward, felt like a message to him. I was no longer just his wife. I was a competitor, a real contender in the business world. But what Ben didn't know was that I was just getting started. The more I pushed forward, the more determined I became to show him and everyone else that I could do this. I could be better than this. I was going to rise above everything. Above the affair, above the betrayal, above everything he thought I was capable of. And so I kept moving forward. It wasn't easy, but I kept telling myself that nothing worth having comes easy. In the months following Ben's betrayal, I watched him fall apart while I climbed higher. It didn't matter that he had destroyed everything we had, because I was building something better, something stronger. But the best part was that I was doing it on my own. I didn't need Ben or Emily or anyone else to validate my success. I was doing it for me. I could feel the tension between our two companies growing. I wasn't just competing anymore. I was overtaking. The deals kept coming in, and each new success pushed me further away from the woman I was before. I wasn't the person who stood by her husband's side, silently supporting him. I wasn't the woman who quietly accepted her place. I was a leader. I was the CEO of my own company, and I was taking it to new heights. But of course, nothing comes without its challenges. With every new success came more pressure, more competition, and more eyes on me. I could feel the weight of being in a male-dominated industry, but I didn't let it get to me. I refused to let anyone underestimate me, to think I didn't belong. And every time someone doubted me, it just fueled my fire even more. In the middle of all this, Ben reached out. His messages were constant: apologies, excuses, desperate attempts to explain why things went the way they did. He wanted me back, or at least, he wanted to be part of my life again. I ignored him at first, focusing on the business. But eventually, I couldn't avoid him any longer. One evening, I agreed to meet him. I didn't know why. I think I just wanted closure. When we sat down, he looked at me with that same old familiar look of guilt. He tried to explain himself, blaming his actions on stress, on circumstances, but I wasn't listening. I didn't want to hear it. I wasn't that woman anymore, the woman who would accept his excuses. "I've moved on, Ben," I said calmly. "I'm not the woman you left behind. I've built something for myself, and I'm proud of what I've done. You don't get to come back into my life and pretend everything's the way it was. You broke me, but you also gave me the strength to rise above it. And now, I'm winning. I'm winning without you." I watched as the realization hit him. He had no control over me anymore, no power to dictate my life. I wasn't the same woman who had once been helpless, who had believed in his lies. I was stronger now, and as I walked away from that meeting, I knew deep down that I had made the right choice. I was no longer holding on to a past that wasn't meant for me. I was looking forward to a future that was all mine. It wasn't long before I felt the power of my decisions. I could see it in the way people began to treat me differently. My reputation was changing. I wasn't just the woman who had been abandoned by her husband. I was becoming someone they admired, someone they respected. My company was growing faster than I'd ever imagined. Every time I closed a deal, every contract I signed, I felt the bitterness of the past slip away. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a life for myself, one that had nothing to do with Ben or Emily. The more success I had, the more Ben seemed to fall apart. I couldn't help but notice that his company was struggling. They had tried to steal some of our clients, competing with us directly, but they weren't as sharp, as driven as we were. I wasn't just making my way to the top. I was knocking them down as I did it. It was a slow burn at first. I didn't make any moves to show Ben what I was doing. I didn't need to. I didn't have to rub it in his face. The success was enough. I remember the moment it really hit me. One day, I was sitting in a meeting with a potential investor when I received an alert on my phone. It was a report showing the drop in Ben's company's stock value. It had taken a hit, and I knew exactly why. They had failed to adapt, failed to innovate the way I had. It was a silent victory, but a victory nonetheless. I didn't let anyone see my satisfaction. I didn't need to. My accomplishments were already speaking for themselves. What mattered now wasn't just the professional success, though. It was personal. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, from the broken pieces Ben had left me with. I wasn't the woman who was always trying to please him anymore. I was becoming someone new, someone better, and that was the most important thing. I started to reclaim pieces of myself I thought I had lost forever, the confident, independent version of myself who wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. But despite all my progress, Ben kept reaching out. His apologies, his attempts to reconcile, they never stopped. He would call, text, even send emails. I could hear his voice in the back of my mind every time I succeeded, every time I celebrated a new victory. He couldn't understand why I had shut him out, why I refused to listen to his pleas. He thought we could go back to what we were, as if nothing had changed, as if everything he had done could just be erased with a simple apology. I kept telling myself that I was done with him, that I had moved on, but it wasn't always that easy. There were moments of weakness, moments where I thought about what we had before the affair. I remembered the good times, the plans we had made together. But then I would snap out of it, remind myself of what he had done to me, and keep pushing forward. I was building a future, and I wasn't about to let him destroy that with his empty words. My company kept growing, and so did the offers. People wanted to work with me. They wanted to collaborate with my team, to be part of what we were building. It was like a snowball effect. The more I accomplished, the more I was wanted, respected, and admired. I became someone people turned to for advice, for mentorship, and with every new step, I could feel the weight of the past lifting off my shoulders. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Through all this, there were moments when I felt like I couldn't do it alone. It wasn't just about running a company, it was about managing the emotional toll of everything that had happened. And as strong as I felt, there were days when I needed someone to remind me that I wasn't crazy for doing this, for pushing so hard. That's when I turned to my closest friends, mentors, and the few people who had been there for me when I needed them the most. One person in particular stood out, Maria. She had been a colleague of mine for years, a woman who had always encouraged me to take risks, to believe in myself. When everything fell apart with Ben, Maria was the one who pulled me aside, listened without judgment, and helped me focus on what mattered most. She didn't just offer advice, she believed in me, in my potential. And that belief in me was like a lifeline. Maria helped me navigate some of the toughest moments of my journey. When I doubted myself, when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all, she was there to remind me that I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. She kept me grounded and focused, urging me to stay true to my vision, no matter how tough things got. And it wasn't just her. Over time, I surrounded myself with people who had my back, people who wanted to see me succeed, not because they had to, but because they believed in me. Together, we built something special. Every challenge became an opportunity, and every failure was just another step toward something better. As I pushed forward with my company, the support I had from those who truly cared about me made all the difference. They didn't see me as the woman who had been left behind. They saw me for who I was now, a leader, a fighter, someone who could take on anything. With each new venture, each new project, I felt myself growing in ways I had never imagined. But even with all this support, I knew I still had to face the real challenge, the one that had been lingering in the back of my mind. I had to face Ben. I had to deal with the man who had broken my heart, who had tried to destroy everything I'd worked for. But this time, I wasn't going to do it out of anger or hurt. I was going to do it because I had won. I had become the woman I always knew I could be, and no one could take that away from me. Not even him. It was inevitable. The messages, the calls, the apologies, they all led to one thing, a confrontation. Ben hadn't given up, and honestly, part of me had been dreading this moment. I knew it was coming. I could feel it. The harder I worked, the more successful I became, the louder his desperation grew. He wanted me back. He wanted to act like nothing had happened, like the past could just be erased. I didn't want to meet him, but I knew I had to. I owed it to myself to look him in the eye and make it clear that the woman I was now wasn't the one he could manipulate anymore. So I agreed. I chose a neutral location, a small cafe, nothing fancy. When he walked in, looking like he had everything under control, it hit me how much I had changed. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't that woman who had begged him for answers. I was a woman who had rebuilt her life and wouldn't let anyone, especially him, destroy it again. He sat down across from me, his expression soft, like he thought he could win me over with guilt. He tried to tell me how much he regretted everything, how sorry he was. His voice shook, and there was a slight tremble in his hand as he reached for his coffee. I didn't interrupt, just sat there, letting him talk. I could hear the pain in his voice, but I couldn't sympathize. Not anymore. I've made a huge mistake, Ava. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. I never meant to hurt you. I couldn't stop myself. please just give me a chance, he pleaded. I sat back looking at him. I thought about everything, the lies, the pain, the betrayal. I had spent months rebuilding myself, and he thought a few words would make it go away? Ben, I'm not that woman anymore, I said quietly but firmly. I'm not the one who would forgive and forget. I've moved on, and I've built something better than I could have ever imagined before. You didn't just break my heart, you underestimated me. You thought I would crumble, but you were wrong. I've grown stronger than I ever knew I could be. He tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand, stopping him. I don't need you in my life anymore. I continued, my voice steady. You may have broken me at one point, but that's not who I am now. I'm happy without you. I'm stronger without you, and I'm done. I could see the realization in his eyes, the hurt. He was losing me, and for the first time, I didn't care. There was no anger in me, no bitterness, just a quiet understanding that this chapter of my life was finally closed. He left, and I didn't look back. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was free. In the weeks that followed, I did what I had always done. I worked. But now, every move I made, every deal I closed was a victory for me, a reminder of how far I'd come. The satisfaction wasn't just in the success, it was in knowing that I had built this from the ground up, without anyone's help but my own. I didn't need Ben's validation, his apology, or his support. I had everything I needed within me. But the biggest victory came when I became the CEO of my company. It wasn't something I expected or even planned for. It just happened. The board recognized my hard work, my leadership, and my ability to turn things around. I was officially the head of a thriving business, and my name was now synonymous with success. At that moment, standing in my office, looking out over the city skyline, I realized that this was what true freedom looked like. It wasn't just the title or the money or the power. It was knowing that I had done it all on my own, that I had turned my pain into strength and created something better than I ever thought possible. Ben and Emily? They were nothing more than a distant memory now, a blip in my past. While they floundered in their own mess, I was leading my company to new heights, building a future that didn't rely on anyone else's approval. It wasn't just a professional win, it was a personal one. I had come out on top, and the best part was, Ben didn't even know how much I had surpassed him. He thought he could destroy me, but in the end, I became everything he never thought I could be, and more. As I sit here now, looking at everything I've built, I can't help but feel a sense of pride. But it's not just about the business or the career. It's about the woman I've become, the woman who didn't let anyone define her, who didn't let the pain of betrayal be the end of her story. Ben's failure to recognize my worth only pushed me to work harder, to become better. And now, as I stand at the helm of my company, I know that my success wasn't just because of my skills or my vision. It was because I refused to be anyone's second choice. I refused to be defined by the mistakes of others. I've built something for myself, something I can be proud of. And the best part? I did it without him. I did it without needing his approval, without needing anyone's validation. So what's next for me? The sky's the limit. My company is growing, and I have so many plans for the future. But what matters most is that I've finally found peace. I've moved on from the betrayal, from the hurt, and now I'm in control of my own destiny. Ben may have thought he could break me, but in the end, he only made me stronger, and that's the best revenge of all. Looking back, I can hardly recognize the woman I was before all of this. I was someone who was defined by her relationships, her ability to please others, and her attachment to a man who never truly saw me for who I was. Now I stand tall, no longer bound by the expectations of others. Every challenge, every heartbreak has shaped me into the woman I've become, and I'm proud of her. Ben and Emily are just echoes in my past now. The affair, the betrayal, they seemed so all-consuming in the moment, but they no longer hold any power over me. It wasn't their lies or their choices that mattered in the end. It was how I chose to rise above them. I've built something that is mine, something that can't be taken away. My success isn't defined by anyone else's actions. It's defined by my resilience and my refusal to give up. I've learned that strength doesn't come from being untouched by hardship. It comes from facing it head-on and using it as fuel to become better. I used to think I needed someone else to complete me, to validate me. But the truth is, I've always had everything I needed inside me. The best part of all this? I've found peace. I'm finally in control of my own life, my own future. And as I look toward what's next, I know one thing for sure. I'm unstoppable.